Hey, this is Dave from the Adobe Character Animator team, and welcome to the September 2018 episode of Tips and Tricks. Today, we'll start things off with the Community Spotlight, which includes a virtual reality experience with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, an overview of the 3 Comic-Con panels that we did in San Diego recently, and a way to send a MIDI input to Character Animator puppets using a ring that you put on your finger. Then I'll talk a little bit about Evan Flamethrower Robot Detective, which launched last month. I'll talk about the 4 free puppets that are available for you to download and use, and also show the dialogue tree that gave a method to the whole madness behind the interactive aspects of it. Then finally, last month I did a drawing tutorial of how to draw a robot. I'll take that same character and show you how to slice up flat, regular artwork for use inside a Character Animator and how to turn that into an animated puppet. That's what we have for September, so let's get started. David Gerhardt is the creative director for alternative media at Nickelodeon, and he's been a huge source of feedback in helping shape Character Animator as it's evolved along the way the past few years. But he and his team did something really awesome at San Diego Comic-Con recently. They did a live virtual reality meet and greet with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So visitors put on Oculus Rift headsets and felt like they were on the rooftops of New York talking to Donatello and Michelangelo, who were voiced by the real voice actors from the cartoon. And they were doing this while Dave and his team were puppeteering the Turtles live in Character Animator, which was in turn being fed into the virtual world that was created in the Unreal Engine through NDI. So it's a really innovative setup that was a huge hit with press and fans alike. I wanted to note that Dave is speaking at the Adobe Max conference next month on nonlinear storytelling, and I'm assuming this session is totally sold out, but you should still try to sneak in regardless because he's going to have some really cool insights and things to say about this. So this is one of the coolest animated live setups I've ever seen with Character Animator. These guys continue to kind of set the bar very high for what you can do with live animation, and I'm really looking forward to whatever project they decide to tackle next. Several people from the Character Animator team were also at San Diego Comic-Con and hosted 3 panels there, and luckily a large part of them were recorded and posted on Adobe's Creative Cloud YouTube channel. So I have links in the video description below for you to watch all of these if you want to. The first one was From Hand-Drawn to Digital, Bringing Comic Book Illustrations to Life. This paired up traditional illustrator Pat Moriarty with animator Seth Zeichner and showcased their latest project, The Realm Beyond Reason, which transformed these really awesome hand-drawn, good old-fashioned paper and ink illustrations into a fantastic animated short using Character Animator. Next up was Extraordinary Women, Extraordinary Animation. This included Victoria Neese, Erica Schisler, Emily Williams, Lynn Mitchell, KT Weber, Ashley Postlethwaite, and Jennifer Chu. This is a group of incredibly talented women who shared how they turned their animation and creative talents into careers. And finally, there was the Up Your Game panel, creating personalized animated avatars, which included Christopher Erickson Bow, which you may know better as Scribbly, Jacob Mercy, and Jennifer Chu and Keith Stevens. And they all talked about their various experiences and tips and tricks for live streaming with animated Character Animator personas. So thank you to everyone who came out for these, both the panelists and people who were there in person in the audience. And again, you can watch all of these through the links in the video description below. Misheard Lyrics is an animated short done by Zookeeper Studios, who I recently did an Adobe live stream with a few months ago. And this is a great concept. It's taking lyrics that people commonly get wrong and have a funny story behind them. So in this one, they're talking about the Eagles song Hotel California and the lyric, on a dark desert highway, cool whip in my hair. And they imagine the story behind how that lyric came to be. I particularly love the minimalist style here. This whole thing is done with shades of brown, and I think it works really, really well. They've got a full case study on their website, and it's a great look at a full workflow of using Character Animator and making an animated piece from the initial storyboards to the final After Effects compositing. So it's a great style and a really funny video. There are a ton of music videos out there on YouTube, and it can be pretty hard to stand out from the pack, but I think that's exactly what Neckbreaker by KLab and Def3 does successfully. We did a tutorial a while back about putting character animator animated heads over top of live action footage using motion tracking in After Effects, and that's exactly what they did here. And it has a great style, and it certainly makes for a more visually engaging music video. So I just thought this was a really nice implementation of that technique. Jim Tews is a comedian we featured here before, and I wanted to showcase him again because he put together this video featuring this thing called the Hot Hand USB wireless MIDI controller. It only runs for about $50, but it basically sends MIDI signals based on your hand position. You wear this little ring and then move it around, and based on your different hand rotation and position and all that stuff, it will create MIDI signals, which, if you've watched these episodes before, you know can hook up to Character Animator to triggers and controls in your controls panel and whatnot. So it's a really interesting input technique, particularly in a live setting, as a new way to control a character. So thanks for sharing your experiments, Jim. No One Knows is a channel by a talented young kid who has already amassed 18,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. Most recently, he's been covering a lot of Toca games, which are games that my kids absolutely love on phones and tablets. Very creative, fun little experiences. And basically, he started using Character Animator to begin a new episodic cartoon series in this kind of a late night talk show format where he interviews a lot of the characters from the games. And this works great. Toca has these really simple, colorful, fun characters that just translate really well to Character Animator puppets. And it makes me happy as a UI designer that this is proof that younger kids are able to work with Character Animator and make really cool stuff like this. So if you have kids in your life who aspire to be YouTubers, I think they should check out Noah. I think he's a great inspiration and he's doing some fantastic work. And finally, I recently sat down with Ben Stokes virtually over Skype and did a audio podcast that he then translated it into an animated version where he and I were disembodied heads floating in jars. This is called Talking Heads, and he's done this for several people in the creative industry, talking to them and then taking their audio and turning it into an animated podcast. So when we recorded, we did a Skype call and we each recorded local versions of our audio, so we had clean, separate audio tracks to do the lip syncing with. And then I sent him my audio and he edited it all together into a 14-minute podcast. So podcasts we often think are just audio-based experiences, but Ben is showing a really smart idea to get a visual component to a podcast as well. Evan Flamethrower Robot Detective launched last month, and thank you to the several thousand of you who have already tried to go through it and try to solve the mystery. The stats are looking like about half of you have gotten it right. Half of you are completely wrong and should just be ashamed of yourself. But no, it's okay. I tried to make it pretty hard, but it looks like at least half of you have figured it out. Good news is that all the puppets that are in Evan Flamethrower are available on my Puppets site. So you can have your own, make your own unauthorized fan fiction or sequel, or work on your cosplay for Comic-Con next year, whatever you want. But the biggest question that I've been asked is, how did I put it all together? So it's using YouTube end cards to, have a different choice of questions at the end of each video, but then it also realizes who you've talked to already and it'll check the doors off. So there's a method behind the madness, and it all lies in this insane Illustrator doc. Okay, so here's the full chart, and if I zoom into one of these dialogue trees, like Hackbot, for example, you can see here's kind of the branching paths, and every end point you kind of have a question, you get two questions basically served up at you. Those questions show up over here, and you'll notice I have a bunch of different wordings for those questions. So I made a rule that you can only see the same path up to 2 times. So you might see, this first question, do you recognize the other suspects? And then if you didn't pick that, you would see, do you know Mr. ATM and Suzanne? And that would be your last chance to basically get that path. And when you reach the end, you'll see I've kind of color coded because I realized that certain end paths were the same. So this 5, question number 5 here can go to 6 or 7 in the exact same way that these other 2 did. So I only had to upload and connect these videos one time instead of, all these different times. And then basically I had to upload this path 4 different times because there were 4 ways to get to Hackbot. He could have been your first suspect, he could be the second one you talked to after Mr. ATM, the second after Suzanne X3, or your last suspect. So for Hackbot, it really doesn't matter who you've talked to before. No special questions come up based off of that, but for Suzanne and ATM, that does happen. So I am dependent on if they're your first suspect or you've already talked to Hackbot or Suzanne or whoever, and that will lead, as you can see, to some very different choices based on what you've already done. So basically what ended up happening is I uploaded a ton of videos to YouTube and just manually connected all of the end cards. By the end of it, there were 190 videos that were uploaded. So I wouldn't recommend it to my worst enemy. It was a crazy process, but I'm really happy with how it turned out overall, and I think it was a fun experiment in interactive storytelling. So again, thank you to everyone who's played through Evan Flamethrower and enjoyed digging into those puppets on the OK Samurai site to see how they were all put together. Last month I made a drawing tutorial where over the course of 30 minutes I showed step by step how I draw characters, and specifically this robot character and background. So if you missed that, check it out, it's on the channel now. But I got a few comments of people saying, hey, that's great, we like it, but how would you go about animating this? This is a character animator tutorial channel for the most part, so you do a robot, but I want to bring them to life. So you might find yourself in a situation like this, right, where you have a flat character here and you want to start animating them, but it's not, when you were creating it, you weren't thinking about separating the parts and having the eyes blink and the mouth work and all of that stuff and arms as separate elements. So what I wanted to do is take this character and show how I would go about translating flat artwork into a fully realized character animator puppet. All right, so the first thing is organization, right? So we know that we always have 3 folders here, 3 groups. We have the plus character group, let's just call this robot, and then inside that we have head and body. I'll put the head and body inside the robot group there, and now I've got my robot outside of it. So first thing I gotta do is start to slice it up, and I wanna separate the head and body. So I'm going to use this polygonal lasso tool and just go and find where the head is, just about like that, and click, click, click. I'll press Command X on Mac to cut it out, go into the head, and press Command Shift V to put it back in place exactly, and that's Control Shift V on Windows instead. Okay, so now I've got the head background. I'm just gonna call this BG for background, and I'll put the body inside the body. So that's it so far, but let's bring it into Character Animator already with just this as the starting point. Okay, so by default, something seems to be working here, right? So let's click our robot, make him a little bit smaller by going into transform behavior and bringing the scale down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's go to rig mode. And I'm just gonna fix a few quick things. Now, as I adjust the robot, some of this rigging might get out of date based on how I restructure things, but I'm just going to take these sticks that I'll put in the feet and I will tag each of them as fixed. And that means now when I go back to record mode, he's sticking to the ground. So already I've got a character who is, starting to come to life. It's following my head movements. The body is following with the head. So at the very least, that's what you have to do. Take the head off, put it in the head group, take the body, put it in the body group, put that in the plus character folder, and now you've got a basic working puppet structure. All right, back to Photoshop. Now, the first thing I would probably focus on are getting the eyebrows, eyes, and mouth into good shape. So let's use the same polygonal lasso tool and just kind of cut out these basic eyebrow shapes. So I'm just gonna go around the edges right here. Now I'm gonna copy it, Command C on Mac, and Command Shift V to paste a new layer. So I've basically taken it out, extracted it, and put it on top of its own self. So I'm gonna rename this to right eyebrow because I know that is what I want to name it. And I'm gonna do the exact same process for the left eyebrow. All right, so there we go. Now I have these 2 eyebrows that go up and down. The only problem is there's stuff underneath them, right? And you don't want that to happen. So let's move these out of the way for a second, go to my background, and you could do this a few different ways. The way I'm gonna do it today is using the clone stamp tool over here. I'm going to select a decent size, like let's say 48, that sounds good. I'm gonna hold down Option on top of another section, maybe a section down here actually, to take a sample of it. And then I'll go up here and just start painting over top of where that eyebrow used to be. And you'll see it's taking the pattern from that area down there and applying it to the top. So it's looking a little messy. You can see some blurred, edges here. So I might go in and try to refine some of that. But, a lot of this is going to be hidden when the eyebrow is in front of it. So I think it's okay to be a little bit rough and dirty in these sort of situations. So let's continue that same process for the right eyebrow too. Now, originally, these eyebrows had a little drop shadow underneath them that had them feel like they were on top of the eyes a little bit. So what I'm going to do is create a couple new layers, put these under each eyebrow. So for the right eyebrow, I'm just going to draw some black beneath it. For the left eyebrow in that layer, I'm going to draw some black beneath that. I'm going to bring the opacity on both of these down a little bit, something like that. And then I'm going to merge these two layers by clicking them and going to merge layers. Then the shortcut for that would be Command E on Mac or Control E on Windows. Okay, so now when they move, you can see there's a little bit of a shadow underneath them, and that looks a little bit better. Now this character doesn't have pupils that I need to extract, which is good. I don't have to worry about that. But in the case where you did have that, you would want to, select your eyes and take out the pupil, take out the eyeball, have a blink state, all of that stuff. I think I am going to do a blink state though, so I'm using the magic wand tool. Just going to go up here and do a right blink, and then I'm just going to fill this in with a color like this from the metal, something like that. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, fills over top of the outline, and then I'll do the same thing for the other eye. Make a new layer, fill it in, and call that left blink. Then to keep the consistency of the kind of line art look here, for the right blink, I'm going to put a line across like that. That looks good. And then for the left blink, I'll put a line across for that. And so now when the character blinks, that's open, that's blinked. Now I still have that metal texture that I was using lying around, so I'm just gonna select part of this. I'll bring it in here and overlay it basically. I think I used a hard light for everything, if I remember correctly. So what I can do is just magic wand select my blink, go back to my texture, cut that out, bring it back on top, make it a hard light, and merge these together, rename it as right blink, and now that's a little more textured. Overall, that's looking pretty good. Now remember with blinks though, when they appear, they're gonna by default make everything else disappear in their group. So if I did that right now, all of this other stuff would disappear when the blinks show up. That is not what I want to have happen. So I do need to make the eye groups for the right eye and left eye. And then let's throw the right blink and left blink into these groups. So returning to Character Animator, I can already see that some things are starting to happen. My eyebrows are moving as expected. And when I blink, the character is blinking and showing those blink layers as well. So we're starting to get somewhere, and every little detail you add to the character, the eyes, the eyebrows, the arms, the mouth, you keep seeing it come more and more to life. And it's pretty cool to see, something you've created, particularly if this is one of your first characters, an old character that you drew a long time ago, and now you're suddenly bringing it to life. That's a pretty cool feeling. Now for the mouth, usually you'll see one mouth state, and that's like the neutral state or whatever, the artist has drawn with. So I will use the same technique I did before with the clone stamp tool, where I'll press Option or Alt to take a sample and then paint over these things. So I'm getting rid of this waveform here. Because in this case, what I want to do is basically restart, draw each waveform over again. But in other cases, you may just take a mouse set from another puppet, example puppet, Chloe or Blank Face or something like that, and just use those instead. All right, so that looks pretty good. So what I'm gonna do now is create a group, call it mouth, and I'm just gonna make like maybe 6 layers or something like that. Let's do E, F, M, and neutral. So these are not all the mouse shapes you're going to do, but Character Animator actually has a fallback mechanism for when you don't have all the correct visemes available. So it will try to it will go for the best one for the particular mouse shape you had. And in this case, because this character, I really don't care about the mouse shapes as much, I'm just gonna kind of draw different things here and see how that works. So there's I just want each mouth shape to look a little bit different. F, M. All right, so turn them all on. Let's bring the opacity down to 50 for these so they don't stand out as much. Let's bring neutral as kind of our default. Save and see how that's looking in Character Animator. And so now when I talk, the waveform changes as I say things and finds those mouth shapes, and it's looking pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with how my face is looking now. So the last thing I'm going to focus on for just a basic animated version of this character is the arms. So I'm noticing right here I've got this wire that's connecting the arm to the body, and that's going to create trouble when you're trying to bend things together. So I'm actually going to remove that for the sake of making my life a little bit easier. And I'm going to do the same thing where I'm using the polygonal lasso tool, and I'm just going to separate each of these arms out as their own independent layers. So let's Command X, Command Shift V to put it back into place, and we will call this plus right arm, and I'll do the same thing for the left. Okay, if I wanted my arm then to start bending in Character Animator, I go to the dragger tool down here, and I would click on the arm to add draggables to it. Now for connecting these, you want to make sure that this is on the show mesh outlines and auto handles, otherwise you won't see the green appear. But you'll notice when I attach, there's such a small area of attachment here because I slice this arm directly off from the character, and so where it connects is such a small part. You can see sometimes that runs into issues where, you know, I can see the arm getting kind of detached from the rest of the character, and it's looking a little bit weird there. So let's take our arm here, separate it out, and actually give it a little bit more area. I'm going to make a new layer that goes underneath it and just draw kind of a black circle area below it, and just kind of fill this part in. And then this is going to make it a lot easier to attach to the rest of the character. And so now I'm going to merge these two layers, and I want to move the left arm layer underneath the robot layer so this black is hidden for the most part. So let's do something like that, and do the same thing for the right arm. All right, merge those two together, move it under the robot, and do something like that. Okay, save, go back to Character Animator. So now I can see already the contour of the arm is a little bit different. So now I can drag and have a clearer place where I can connect the arm to the rest of the body. And that's gonna make my life a lot easier. Let's add just some sticks in here for the forearm and the bicep. So there you go. Now you have arms that look pretty good, and even if they start to stretch and come off, you just see a little, black that looks like a shadow there, and it's not that bad. You could fool around with attach styles. You could texture in the color if it felt like it was really standing out to you, but that's probably the best way to do it. So there you have it. In just, a course of maybe 15 minutes or so, I've put together this robot from flat artwork and changed it into a fully working animated character. Now, if I were doing some extra steps, I'd probably add some flashing lights to it. I would add, maybe some pupils to the eyes, a few different effects and triggers and things like that, the claws opening and closing. But for starters, this is looking pretty good. So every character is gonna be a little bit different, right? Maybe you drew a bird and you're changing the beak to a nutcracker jaw, or you have a five-eyed monster and you have to worry about tagging all those different eyes and adding additional face or eye gaze behaviors for it to work. My robot obviously doesn't have pupils, he has a different mouth, but I think the same general concepts will apply to any character. Basically, cut parts out, use the clone stamp tool to hide everything that's behind it, organize and name everything as you would a normal character animator puppet, and then you will get a character which you can animate and do some pretty cool stuff with. All right, that's it for this month. Thank you very much for watching. And if you find yourself at the IBC show in Amsterdam in the middle of this month, I'm gonna be there. This will be my first time going to IBC or Amsterdam, so I'm looking forward to both. But I'm gonna be doing a couple of daily theater presentations, and I'll be demoing Character Animator in a little demo station over there. So I would love to meet any of you who are coming to the show. So please stop by and say hi and show me what you've made with Character Animator. Other than that, if you have any questions or issues or bug reports, the best place, as usual, as always, to get help from that stuff is to go to the official Character Animator forums for more help. That's it for this month. Thank you very much for watching, and have fun.